The polished mahogany gleamed under the soft light of the chandelier, a silent witness to the quiet unraveling within the elegant home of Arthur and Eleanor Vance. Their life had been a tableau of refined taste and unspoken understanding, or so Arthur believed. He, a renowned architect, meticulously built structures of beauty and integrity. She, a curator of rare manuscripts, lived a life steeped in history and hushed secrets. Their love, once a vibrant tapestry, had faded into a comfortable routine. Arthur, engrossed in his blueprints and late-night revisions, had perhaps missed the subtle shifts in Eleanor's gaze, the fleeting absences, the faint scent of a cologne that wasn't his. He attributed it to her demanding work, her artistic temperament. He was a man of logic, and logic dictated a happy, stable marriage. The first tremor of doubt came not from a dramatic discovery, but from a misplaced cufflink, a small, insignificant detail. It was a bespoke piece he'd given Eleanor, a subtle nod to their shared history, one of a pair. He found it in the guest bedroom, a room rarely used, tucked beneath a discarded throw. His mind, usually a fortress of calm, began to churn. Over the next few weeks, Arthur observed. He became a silent detective in his own home. He noted the way Eleanor's phone was always face down, the hushed tones of certain calls, the hurried excuses for evening errands. The evidence, like shards of glass, began to accumulate, each piece reflecting a devastating truth. His wife was having an affair. The man was a junior colleague of Eleanor's, a dashing younger academic named Julian. Arthur, through discreet inquiries, learned of their clandestine meetings, their stolen moments, the whispered intimacies that were once exclusively his. The pain was a physical entity, a searing burn that consumed his chest. But Arthur Vance was not a man given to outbursts or public displays of raw emotion. His sorrow, like his anger, was a deep, cold current running beneath a placid surface. He began to formulate his response, not in a fit of rage, but with the precision of an architect designing a complex edifice. His revenge would be elegant, subtle, and utterly devastating. It would not be a fiery explosion, but a slow, suffocating implosion. First, he started spending more time at home, showering Eleanor with attention, gifts, and a renewed passion that, to her, seemed like a belated resurgence of their old flame. He would praise her beauty, listen intently to her work anecdotes, and suggest romantic getaways. Eleanor, perhaps guilt-ridden or simply enjoying the renewed adoration, found herself drawn back into his orbit, her rendezvous with Julian becoming less frequent, more strained. Julian, frustrated by Eleanor's increasing unavailability and the sudden resurgence of her husband's presence, grew restless. Next, Arthur, leveraging his extensive network, subtly began to champion Julian's career. He'd recommend him for prestigious fellowships, connect him with influential patrons, and subtly elevate his profile in the academic world. Julian, flattered and ambitious, eagerly accepted these opportunities, oblivious to the puppeteer pulling the strings. As Julian's career soared, so did his responsibilities. He was offered a coveted position at a renowned institution, but it was in another country, thousands of miles away. It was a career-defining move, one he couldn't refuse. He presented it to Eleanor as a joint venture, a new beginning for them. But Eleanor, entangled in Arthur's renewed affection and the comfortable familiarity of her life, hesitated.
The romance with Julian, once intoxicating, now seemed less significant against the backdrop of her secure, elegant existence. The reality of uprooting her life for a man who was, ultimately, just a lover, began to sink in. The day Julian left, Eleanor stood at the airport, a forced smile on her face as she waved goodbye. She felt a pang of loss, but also a strange sense of relief. Arthur was there, a comforting arm around her waist, a warm smile on his face. He'd even arranged for a small celebration dinner that evening, ostensibly to cheer her up. The final act of Arthur's tragedy and triumph unfolded a few weeks later. He invited Eleanor to his study, a room usually reserved for his architectural plans. He poured them each a glass of her favorite wine. The air was thick with an unspoken tension, a prelude to something significant. "Eleanor," he began, his voice calm, almost tender, "I believe we need to discuss our future." Eleanor's heart pounded. She braced herself for the confrontation, the accusations, the tears. She was ready to confess, to beg for forgiveness. But Arthur merely smiled. "I've been doing some reflecting and have realized something profound." He paused, taking a sip of his wine. "I've come to understand that our marriage, as beautiful as it has been, has run its course." Eleanor stared at him, bewildered. This wasn't the script she'd envisioned. "I have also come to realize," he continued, his eyes, usually so warm, now held a glint of something cold and unyielding, "that while I appreciate your independent spirit, I prefer a partner who is fully committed to our shared life without distractions." He then calmly laid out the evidence, not with anger, but with a detached clinical precision. He showed her the dates, the times, the messages he'd intercepted. He even produced a photograph, a clear, unambiguous image of Eleanor and Julian, taken discreetly by a private investigator he'd hired. Eleanor's face drained of color. The grand room seemed to spin. "And so," Arthur concluded, his voice unwavering, "I've decided that it's time for us to part ways. I've already contacted my lawyers. The terms will be quite generous, given your contributions to our shared assets. However," he added, a slight hardening in his tone, "there will be a prenuptial agreement clause enforced that significantly favors me in the event of infidelity." He paused, letting the words sink in, "which, as you can see, has been well documented." Eleanor was speechless. The grand gesture of confession, of repentance, had been stolen from her. He hadn't raged, he hadn't wept, he had simply dismantled her world with the same calculated precision he used to design his buildings. Julian, by the way, is doing remarkably well in his new position. A rather brilliant career move for him, wouldn't you agree? I certainly enjoyed helping him along. I hear he's quite busy, finding it difficult to even maintain long-distance relationships these days. He took another sip of wine, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. The elegance of Arthur's revenge lay in its complete lack of overt malice. He hadn't destroyed her. He had simply revealed the fragility of her choices, and with a few precise strokes, engineered a future where she would live with the consequences alone. There was no public scandal, no furious accusations, just a quiet, devastating dismantling of her carefully constructed double life, leaving her with the bitter taste of freedom and the chilling realization that her husband, the quiet architect, had always been several steps ahead.